So I am going to talk about some of the things, some of the major things that are happening this year that are going to spill into next year. It's going to have an impact on the operators, admins, and the developers also. All this is very forward-looking. I don't have timeline. I do expect very soon to be coming out with notifications on these things, but this is one of those socializing of what is coming soon, including what are the benefits and also what components are impacted by these new developing trends happening in the mobile devices area. Okay, and I'm going to talk about a project called SkinnyCat. That's an internal name, but I'm still using it because it's kind of makes complete sense. And what is SkinnyCat? I'll just give you an example. Several years ago, Zebra was the first one to recognize Android potential and embrace it completely. We were the first to, in the enterprise field, we were the first to come out with ruggedized mobile devices. Since then, we have come a long way, several end-to-end solutions, several mobile devices, SKUs, and hardware and software. Hundreds and hundreds of use case-based features have been created, and probably many of you already use them. And you can see that the others are trying to catch up with the number of features that we have built over years, right? And now what we have thought is we have decided to go to the next level. Time has come to take our solutions and feature set to the next level of innovation, quality, and cost saving. And that project is called SkinnyCat. And SkinnyCat is all about slimming down to find efficiency, find efficient, rapid, and cost-effective ways of delivering feature to customers. The re-architecting has been done. The implementation is going on. As a matter of fact, very soon you will start getting devices and then the software updates, which will have SkinnyCat under the hood. And you may even see some of the new SkinnyCat tools outside the hood as well, so that you can start using them. That's what we call transition period. When we start the SkinnyCat, you don't have to move to SkinnyCat, but eventually, over a period of time, you will move to the SkinnyCat to use the new tools and new mechanism and new APIs, those kind of things. The whole idea is, it starts in A10, A11, and when A12 comes, the complete SkinnyCat has happened, right? At that time, we should be in the new architecture completely. And the timeline is not sent out yet. I hope to send out those timelines pretty soon. So what is the strategy? Strategy is use standards instead of creating Zebra-specific solutions. Instead of adding more features into MX and bypass standards such as DPC that Android has been providing in the recent time, embrace Google APIs as much as possible. Use Google's manage config for application configuration instead of our old way of XML way of doing things. When we started up this, Google did not have all these standards. It was kind of open for everybody. That's why we came up with several of the standards that we have today. As a matter of fact, Google talked to us how we are doing things, and that's the result of all this DPC, manage config, and everything coming into place. And then, like I said, we were using XML to configure devices. So from your app, from EMM apps to our frameworks, we were sending XML, and we have decided to move to JavaScript because that's number one. It is more scalable, much easier to add features, and also it's the standard, right? And I will talk about Zebra custom partitioning, so-called enterprise partitioning that we have been using. And we were using it for persisting data and sharing data, but we would like to move to the Android standard called Android Content Provider. With this comes more security so that unauthorized access to device and Zebra solutions can be prevented. This also includes support for AOSP. And another thing we are doing as part of SkinnyCat is we are abstracting applications to the highest level possible from, a lot of features were built at the BSP. Now they are being abstracted to the application level as much as possible. Not in all places, but in most places. What that means is it's less complex, much more easier to debug and resolve issues. And also, because it's abstracted, it is not dependent on LG or OS update distribution mechanism. So we probably should be able to distribute in Play Store. That doesn't mean they won't come on the device out of the box. Many of them do, but some of them will pull them out of BSP and put them on Support Portal or Play Store. And also, that helps us with adding new features and releasing to customers as quickly as possible, right? And also, as a customer, you get to use components you need because all these components were embedded in the BSP and you had to install the new OS update. And whether you want it or not, all the 25 features that come with that update, you will get them, right? With this, you only get the ones that you need. You can decide. So BSP is not bloated. It's not taking away your resources. So you get to use in your application how to use those resources. Also, testing becomes easier too. You only use the test the feature that you're downloading and upgrading. So you're not testing the entire OS update because it may contain many other features and you're afraid it could have broken some backward compatible. Even though we test all test cases to make sure backward compatibility exists, you always do your own testing. I know that. So that's also a savings on the customer part. And as I said, many of these value adds are going to be available in Google Play and Zebra Support Portal. We are upgrading our applications to support all of this in terms of security and the keys, and then the new Play Store requirements that's coming in November or so, including app bundles and other things. We're upgrading our apps to comply with that. And then the last thing is memory optimization. Once again, like I said, most of the resources that was taken up earlier because of the abstraction and because we removed from BSP, they are no longer taking up your resources. So it's abstracted, so the tools are simplified. Okay. So the next one is persistency in this SkinnyCat. How is data persisted today? We have this enterprise partition, and then you copy your files, you copy your configuration, and anything you want to persist through the enterprise reset, you put them there. And but the problem with that is it is not a standard, Google standard. It also is not secure. That Zebra demands high security for our customers. It's not very secure. And also, it is more expensive, and it takes a lot more effort to add the enterprise partitioning features in our devices. And that's also a savings for both Zebra as well as customers. And what will replace enterprise partition? We will replace it with Google's content provider. We will build our value adds around it. We'll call SSM, that means Secure Storage Manager. And so that's what we will use. That's what we expect our customers and EMMs to use for sharing data between application as well as persisting data across enterprise reset. And also how to use SSM, that's the content provider. It is not proprietary. So you are going to use Google APIs, to access that. And as we add more value adds around it, so you will automatically get it as well. Okay, so what does it mean for my application or customer applications to use SSM? Any application, including Zebra application that's currently using enterprise partitioning, will need to be modified to use SSM for data sharing and data persistence. Like I said, there is a transition period. We will start giving the SSM tools, SSM capability very soon, in the next few months or so, actually in a couple of months, and then you should be able to start playing with that, and you have a good amount of time all the way into next year to move your applications to use the new mechanism. Now, if you're not using enterprise partition, you don't need to do anything in your application. So there is the Android documentation on content providers, but we will also provide a lot of documentation in our tech talk on how to use this, how to make use of SSM use cases, as well as code snippets. And also, as we add our own value adds, which we will to make up for what is lacking in content provider, we will provide that information and roadmap to you. And EMMs will also do the same thing. They will use content providers or SSM for the same purpose. And how that works, just a architectural kind of a not even blueprint, not even architecture. So today you have AirWatch SODI or any other EMMs, and then you have StageNow. They're all creating XML, APK, and CFG, and pushing them into enterprise partition. And moving forward, they will use the content provider to push it into the SSM that we have created there. And that's where the storage happens using name value pair. So opening it and getting back is all through name value pair. So you don't have to open a file and then try to parse it through. It's all standard. So you store it that way, you retrieve it that way in your application after the enterprise reset. The purpose of this session is not to go into the details of every little detail. It is just giving this message out, kind of socializing, get your feedback, and definitely we will have more documentation as well as live talks on this as we get into that phase very soon. So that's the SSM or Secure Store Manager or data persistency in enterprise partitioning, replacing enterprise partitioning. Now we are getting into DataWedge. What does it mean in DataWedge? DataWedge uses auto import mechanism. So you create a config file, you push it to a specified folder, and DataWedge keeps an eye on that folder. And if there is a new file, it imports it. That's considered a major security gap, and we have built some workarounds for this gap. It's already available through CSP. You can enable, disable this, and then you get to control when the import happens. But that's not the end goal we want it to be. We wanted to build manage config, Google's manage config, as a standard mechanism for configuring DataWedge. As we get to the final SkinnyCat, DataWedge will support. Actually, in the next few months, it will start supporting in manage config way. But at the end of the transition period, it is expected that everybody is using the manage config instead of the current mechanism. We also have a reporting mechanism, and we haven't come across anyone using it, so we are going to deprecate it. The reporting was meant for making sure when you do import a config file, if there are any issues with the importing, how do I know what worked and what not worked? While it seems like that's a great feature, but we have come to a point where all the features are very consistent across all our portfolio. So that's, and then we have a standard platform as opposed to when we started DataWedge, where it was very fragmented. Now all features works across all platforms and all flavors. So really, there is no reason for this reporting. And also, DataWedge provides a CSP for basic configuration of DataWedge, basically securing the DataWedge so that auto importing is not happening, those kind of things. That will be, CSP will be replaced with Google's manage config when we reach the end goal, right? And also, the currently configuration persists across enterprise reboot by copying DataWedge config file to the enterprise folder. But moving forward, we will use, and your application uses or EMMs will use manage config to modify and persist across the enterprise reboot for DataWedge. It's not just DataWedge, you will see the pattern here, right, moving forward. So what are the new features expected in DataWedge? There is no change needed in your code. No changes to the way a profile is created, used, no changes in behavior. The app, the interfaces, intent API mechanism, or keystrokes, all of that will work the same way. So there is no reason for you to change anything in your application. The only changes expected are the way the DataWedge is configured and mass deployed. I talked about manage config, and also DataWedge is distributed with the device today out of box. We will continue to do that. DataWedge is a core component, very valuable tool in MDNA. We'll continue to distribute it with the device, but we'll also make it side loadable. That means a new version is there, and you should be able to download and update DataWedge without having to wait for the next BSP update or the LG update. So that's kind of best of both worlds. So you get it out of the box, and you also get to upgrade it as you need it. And the changes, as I mentioned before, CSP will no longer be needed. We will deprecate it, and then eventually we will use manage config for configuration. So that's DataWedge, and then I'm going to move on to EMDK. So what changes are expected in EMDK? Only the apps using the profile manager feature in EMDK will be impacted in some ways. Right? We'll get to that. If you are using scanning or other APIs, there is no changes. Your app will work as is. Currently, the profile manager profiles and their configurations are stored in an XML. And these are Zebra proprietary value adds. XML, I talked about this. The same stage now uses the XML. EMDK uses the same XML to configure the device and secure the device. But in the future, instead of using XML, EMDK will use JavaScripts for storing the configuration data. So when you write your application and create a profile in EMDK profile manager tool on the PC, and it will save it in JavaScript. And JavaScript is what it's going to deliver to MX in the background to achieve what it needs to do. So the updated PC tool will be available sometime second half, very soon in 2021, when the transition period begins. What you're required to do is no changes in your source code. You just need to recompile your apps with the new tool so that the JavaScript is created. And then that's what you will deploy to your devices. And at some point, once the transition period ends, it is expected that legacy XML configuration will no longer be supported. What is the benefit of using this JavaScript? It helps us with the perform conditional configuration not available through XML. So you can see that in our XML, you want to add a feature which depends on another feature, and it depends on another feature before you can set that feature. And if you don't have that layered conditional configuration, then it's all top to bottom. It becomes extremely complicated and very prone to errors, both on Zebra side as well as customer side. That's what JavaScript brings us, right? It makes it easier. And also, because of that reason, processing time for JavaScript is significantly faster than XML. So your apps will be much more responsive. And also, JavaScript resource files can be easily modified to add new features as opposed to XML-based one. So the impact I already mentioned, application just needs to be rebuilt, no changes to your source code. when the new EMDK tool is available. And this is how the current is. You build an APK, it creates an XML, it bundles your APK with that XML, and then when you run it on the device, up here, the XML gets passed through EMDK into MX, and MX sets the configuration. And when we move to the JavaScript or SkinnyCat mechanism, it creates, instead of XML, it creates a JavaScript. And your app bundles that. You don't need to know what it is and how it's all done, just like today. And then that gets pushed to the MX DPC, and then that JavaScript gets executed. But during the transition, we support both. As you can see, we are adding a MX JavaScript converter. So if your app is pushing XML, it gets converted to JavaScript real time. And it's not like for every transaction this is happening. The very first time when your app runs, the conversion happens, and then that's used after that, right? And then if you have a new APK with JavaScript, it directly goes to our system. So from a FAQ, already mentioned, do I need to change the code? No, you just need to recompile. How do I know if my EMDK plugin is capable of creating JavaScript? We will send this message out, what version, and maybe what notification you get. And then also we'll update tech docs with the info. So we're not going to update tech docs only at the end of the transition. We're going to start doing it very soon, even before the transition period begins. How about new features in EMDK? Once the transition period ends, the expectation is we will only add features in the JavaScript. We won't backport it to XML. Now, there are always exceptions to these kind of rules, but that is the plan, and we will try to follow that as much as possible. And I already mentioned during that transition, we'll support both old and new way XML and JavaScript. EB and EKB, what's going to happen? No changes. Once again, you don't need to change anything in your source code. But EB has a config file, same way, XML, just like DataWedge, just like other apps are using, such as EHS. And moving forward, we will add manage config to it to comply with the standards. And also, persistency is achieved through manage config in EB as well as EKB. EB does not have a CSB, but EKB does have a CSB for configuration. That will be upgraded to use manage config. Once the transition period ends, EKB CSB will be deprecated. During the transition period, both CSB and manage config will be supported. And the same thing for EB as well. During the transition period, we'll support both mechanisms. ZSL is Zebra Software License. Many of you don't use it directly, but those of you who use EB or other licensed products such as MDNA licensed products, you will use ZSL to push your licensing activation through ZSL using either EMM or through StageNow. Moving forward, the CSP will go away, and ZSL will use the manage config, excuse me, and CSP will be someday deprecated. So this is the kind of this is not a final roadmap. This is something we are thinking about. The dates are not set yet. So as you can see, A10 was completely fat cat. A11, we have started migrating towards SkinnyCat. A bunch of things under the hood are already migrated. You may not even notice this, but the tools will start migrating from second half of this year all the way into 2022. and then you will start seeing the tools coming out. That's when the transition period will begin. So expect a notification on this soon. We'll try to make this information available through several options and routes, including conferences and then training sessions and tech talks and GTX and every opportunity we get. Okay, that was the SkinnyCat. I'm going to move on to the new features that are being added. There are several very exciting solutions that are happening. Not all of them I'm covering here at this point because one, either we are not ready to share them, or two, it is kind of far off. But one of them is Z Measure, expected in Q4, Q1 2022. Maybe beta will be available much sooner. So this is basically it is is a measuring utility, enterprise measuring utility. You can go and download Google measuring utility. Apple also provides something similar to that. Those who have tried Google measuring utility, you might be frustrated with the problems it's having. But the idea is it is not necessarily enterprise ready. Our goal is to make this more enterprise ready. And then the accuracy will be much better when we add the time of flight sensors. They won't be available on all devices. It's an optional thing. And then we will also use AR Core to make the accuracy better in terms of measurement. Another value add is we'll integrate this into DataWedge so that you can control it through profiles and then intent mechanism, because the other tools out there, they measure and then they give you the measurements right on the tool, not necessarily a way for you to extract that in your application and work on it. That's why it's not enterprise kind of utilities. This is enterprise. And then we have, I'm not going to get into the different, a lot of things that are here. One is standalone local mode and all of that. We'll share more and more data as in the next few weeks to months. And these are the supported devices. As a matter of fact, these are the AR Core supported device as well, right? Because Z Measure uses AR Core, devices need to support AR Core for this feature. Once again, you use DataWedge to kickstart the measuring utility, measure it, and then get the data back into your application. And the next one is OCR support in DataWedge. We expect the phase one to begin in Q4. And what phase one will have is well, let me step back. There was a simulscan tool which was doing OCR, but now it's end of life. It's replaced with the next-gen simulscan that's integrated in DataWedge. However, when we moved features from legacy simulscan into the next-gen simulscan in DataWedge, not all features were transitioned. And OCR not one of them that got transitioned. So, but we are now in the process of adding the OCR support in DataWedge. And as part of this, in the first phase, that's by the end of this year, if everything falls in place, and please note that these are all tentative dates. A lot of things need to happen between now and these dates before they really come out. So that's why this is forward-looking discussion, not a real roadmap. The first phase is going to be a free-form OCR in DataWedge. Free-form is generic document capture. That means as you're holding your device on the document, it reads the scannable area of the document and start passing data back to your application. Now, how about OCR AB? OCR AB is already supported, so you can use it today. So this does not, you don't need to wait for this free-form OCR. And also, multi-barcode scanning is already supported in simulscan in DataWedge today. You don't need to wait for anything. In the second phase, we will add the so-called specific use case, which is more enterprise ready, right? Yeah, there are a lot of people who would want free-form, sure, but there are other people who would want specific use case OCR. For example, license plate, vehicle ID number, tire ID number, utility meters, and more. There are several more use cases across different segments, right? And on top of that, I have my own customized requirement. How do you support my OCR through customized OCR capturing? We will also add that capability. We will work with you to create OCR for your customized requirement, but we will add that capability into this one. So that's a long time ask in DataWedge. We need OCR support, and it's coming soon. Trying to check the time. I'm going to go through very quickly here. Zebra Workstation Connect, or ZWC, expected phase 1 is expected very soon in Q3 2021. It enhances and it adds several new features that Android desktop mode doesn't do today. Today, Android desktop mode is there, but it's pretty basic. So we are adding enterprise use cases and Zebra value adds to this to make it really usable in an enterprise situation. The amount of excitement this is causing among our partners and our customers is amazing. And basically, when you dock your device in the Workstation Cradle, you can't do it with all Workstation Cradle. It has to be approved Workstation Cradle, and we will list that as and when we start giving you more information on this. The following screen will appear. You will see at the bottom left, this is the all apps. If you click on that, so you will see the all apps. So now, this is all still running on the device, and then it's using the desktop monitor to show this. So it's kind of a mix and match of, you can say, there is some Windows user experience as well as Android user experience in many ways, right? So you will see that to enhance the user experience, we are bringing them together, right? I'm not listing all the features here because there are really several, if not hundreds, right? So so when you launch it, it's going to come to the foreground, but you can configure it to run in the background as well. And then you can close an app, as you can see here, right click, and then you can say, get it out of here and move it to device. And then you can add shortcuts, remove all shortcuts, sort the shortcuts by, sort it alphabetically, sort it by dates, set wallpaper, reset wallpaper to the default one. All of them can be done. And notification panel right here for reading your active notifications for both mobile and desktop applications. It allows reading them, also dismissing them, right? And we are, changing wallpaper is also available. Additional features: mirror mode displays both device and desktop, or you can choose to desktop mode only. Screen blank on device when when in desktop only mode. Screenshot capture on desktop. Audio routing. Keyboard shortcuts similar to Windows shortcuts. EKB support, EB support, and a lot more. I just don't have enough time and space to cover them all. And EMM support and Play Store support. A lot of these, the infrastructure is going to be built into the device itself, but we also have in the same strategy where you should be able to distribute it through Play Store or support portal so that you can provide updates as quickly as possible with as little hassle to the customer as possible, right? So for that reason, we will make this APK available in Google Play Store, and then it will support deployment, configuration, and activation through standard EMMs using managed config, right? And then StageNav will also support it. Some of the features you can do through EMM is screen orientation, screen resolution control, Configuration status, show and hide, battery, Bluetooth, cellular, VPN, Wi-Fi, Ethernet, desktop wallpaper, desktop shortcuts, enable, disable USB storage access, restrict access to settings, auto app dispensation. That means how you want your app behave when it's docked and undocked. For example, stop, minimize, move to foreground, launch, etc., etc. All of that, you have seen many of these features available on the device through EMM or StageNow today, and they will be expanded to the desktop as well. Another thing we are adding for desktop is support for USB scanner, so that you can connect your USB scanner and then scan it into the desktop mode application, right? So what does it mean for your app? I have an app. This is all good. I even have a use case for this. What do I need to do? You don't need to do anything in most cases. It will scale automatically to match the device screen resolution when docked and undocked. And it will pretty much look and feel the same way when you're using it on the desktop as it does on the device if you don't do anything. That means it will work as it intended. However, you may decide to make use of the desktop screen when docked. For example, you can change the look and feel, provide a better UX, add more controls. I'll show you the next picture that Microsoft Word is doing. You may decide to do USB scanning in desktop mode only, or you may decide to say, when I'm in desktop mode, I want to take payments or some other use cases that are unique to you, only when an operator comes to the desktop mode and then start using it, right? So operator is running around using the device in the regular device mode, and then once it's all done, to help a customer or complete a task, the operator will go to the desktop and then make use of the desktop features that are either not available on devices, or it's not that user-friendly on device. And by the way, we will also support touchscreen on the desktop mode as well. And how do I know I'm in desktop mode? So you will use the action dock event intent API for detecting docking and undocking event. And this is the example of how Microsoft is doing Microsoft Word. And then you see when you are in the mobile device, the options are very little here, right? Some of them may not be available at all. Some of them you may need to drill down to see it. But the minute you go into desktop mode, you see all this is pretty much like Windows Word here at this point, and that's where the app has been modified to take use of this. When we do come out with this, we will add several documentation and guidelines to take full advantage of this. Many of them will be available online, but we will also add links to that when we come out with this. And the last one is Japanese translation, expected very soon. We have been our goal is to add support for localization, and we have done Chinese localization in the past, and we are moving to Japanese. But overall, in the future, we'll focus more and more on localization, right? So some of the components we picked based on some of the requirements and demands coming from field is EHS, StageNow, and DataWedge. So DataWedge and the tech docs are modified to do the DataWedge, EHS, and StageNow, which will be made available soon. And you can see that not all are translated because the most of the standard is, even in APAC languages, is you leave the technology terms in English. So this is one of the screen, how it looks in Japanese. You don't see a whole lot, and we are working with several teams in Japan to do this, to get the right translation, because obviously you don't want to Google and try to translate this, right? We have even hired translators, and we are in connection with our, we are in touch with our sales team as well as our customers to get the feedback on how to do the translation. For example, this is the DataWedge, profile 0 or default. You can see on the left, pretty much everything is, other than profile 0 and default, everything else is translated. And you may say, oh, hold on a second, enterprise keyboard, should it be translated or not? We went back and forth with several people, and then it was based on the input from the field. We didn't make these decisions. And the stage now landing page, this is how you're used to the one on the right hand, barcode staging, NFC staging, local file staging. That's how it would look. Wireless information on the enterprise home screen, and also another enterprise home screen, the admin home screen. This is how it might look, right? For some reason, play and store. Play is left in English, but store is translated. I guess that's the standard. And that's the last of my slide. I'm going to stop sharing this and open up for Q&A if there are any.